Oh yes, this is the Hardcore Marketing Show. I'm Casey Cheshire, your host for this epic journey. Today's show is sponsored by Ringmaster, on a mission to launch B2B podcasts that create relationships, generate revenue, and drive growth. Ringmasterlive.com. Bam. I hit record and we are on. There's no delay on this one. I just had to get right to it because literally if we kept talking anymore before the show, the whole show is happening off air. I'm so excited to introduce this guest to you. I've met him. I've been on his podcast and he is one of my, if not my favorite podcasters. So let me tell you a little bit more about him. Who is this person? Who is this stranger? Internationally recognized B2B marketing thought leader. He is also a brand strategist, and we are going to smash some stuff around brand today, which I can't wait to get to. It's one of those spots that I really need to learn more about. He's also on the podcasting side. I mentioned he's a favorite podcaster of mine because he asks the right questions. He is also an entrepreneur and a world traveler, host of the B2B Marketers on a Mission show, co-founder and director of client engagement at EINBLICK Consulting. Christian Klepp, welcome to the show, sir.
Woo, Casey. It is an honor to be here, man. And thank you so much for that intro and for the shout out. I am truly flattered. And yeah, I'm feeling a little bit of pressure now. I mean, like with that wasn't heck of an introduction. So
yeah, no, I couldn't live up to that, but I know you can. So I'm going to stop talking and I want to get into this. I can't wait to learn from you. And it's happening, right? I'm going to pass it to you. So Get ready. It's heavy. Okay, here you go. Go ahead and grab it.
There we go.
Got it? Okay, nice. Two-handed grab, ready to strike. Perfect. So Christian, take Thor's hammer and smash for me some kind of marketing myth, bogus strategy, misconception. Just set the record straight once and for all.
Wow. Well, the cheeky side of me is coming out now, and I can't help myself but say you have bestowed on me the honor of Mjolnir.
Yes, great pronunciation. We're going to clip that. And anytime that someone asks me that question, we're just going to put your voice in there for me.
Well, to be fair, I just watched The Northman, so I've got my Nordic, my Norse name down, man. Just the pronunciation
seething through your blood. You're ready to smash.
Absolutely. So here's the one I want to smash today, and you and I have talked about this before. B2B organizations need to stop treating branding as something that is nice to have and we don't really need it. We'll think about it a little bit more and maybe give it some airtime when we make more money, we generate more revenue. Or the other one I keep hearing is, yeah, Christian, we don't need branding. We've got salespeople. Yeah,
we don't need branding. We've got salespeople. Wow.
Yeah.
And so.
And please, I'm not saying anything bad about salespeople today. I mean, I am a business owner myself, and I am responsible for sales, as are you, I'm sure.
We appreciate a good sales rock star. Hell yeah.
Absolutely.
But this, it's like apples to oranges, right? It's not like, oh, I don't eat oranges because I eat apples. It's like, that's a different fruit, dude.
Absolutely. And it's not the same thing. Right?
Yeah, it's not even a fruit, right? It's
well, yeah, for starters, right?
I don't eat oranges because I have a car. And you're like, what?
Right. Well, look, it's not the same thing, and to throw all of that into the same basket, I think is probably not advisable if I'm going to be very diplomatic, right?
Oh, don't be diplomatic. This is the Hardcore Marketing Show. You can tell us how you feel. How do you really feel, Christian?
Well, you have to separate those two, right?
Yeah.
I'm not trying to dismiss sales. That certainly is a vital component in the organization.
Yeah.
But to quote another guest I had on my show, sorry, Casey, it wasn't you, another guy, branding is the grease on the machine of the organization.
I like that. Do you remember who said that? Shout out?
I do, yeah. Shout out to Mark Stoos.
All right, Mark, what's up, man? We'll try to find his episode, link to it.
Yep.
So it's the grease, huh? It it helps
keeps it moving.
Yeah.
Keeps it going.
You need grease.
That it runs properly. Yeah.
Yeah.
But the analogy I love to use when people ask me, like, why is branding so important and why do you need branding and
right.
Branding this, branding that. So the analogy I like to go back to, and I think a lot of people in North America can relate to it, using the real estate analogy, using the house building analogy. Okay.
Okay.
So just imagine, if you will, you're building a house, you've got your contracting team, and they've got all the building materials and the skills and the know-how and the experience and all that. And they're trying to build this house without an architect's blueprint. What is that house going to look like? Right? Who knows,
That's tough,
right?
man.
Might be good, might be bad.
Might be able to build a dog house without a blueprint, but man, houses get complicated.
Yeah. So I'm going to hazard a guess and say that it's going to be a bit challenging, because these guys probably know what they're doing and they have that relevant experience, but if they don't know what the house is going to look like at the end of the day, that's where they can be treading, or let's use a nautical term here, navigating into murky waters.
Yeah.
Right? And most important of all, just to pile onto that housing analogy, just imagine building a house without having a solid foundation.
Yeah, it'd be terrible. It immediately falls over right away. And no matter what you build, it's always going to fall over, and you can't imagine why it keeps falling over on you, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. So it's the same thing with branding. So if we're going to think about that analogy for a second, and then we go back to branding, that's really what branding is. It forms that foundation. It forms that strategic framework that is then needed, not just for marketing, but also ultimately for sales and other functions within the organization. Because I think one of the other misconceptions is that, people tie branding to, well, that's stuff that the marketing people do, right?
Right.
So I would say that's partly correct, right? Because marketing should take should be in the driver's seat, or they should take the lead. They should be the custodian, right? When it comes to branding, but it is a collective responsibility within the organization. And that's one of the biggest shifts that I've seen when it comes to marketing. Previously, it was like, okay, that's marketing's job, but now it's a collective thing. And why do I say that? Okay, not to stray too far off the topic now, but
yeah,
I this is probably one of these like overused terms that you've seen on LinkedIn and other platforms, but the Great Resignation, the Great Reshuffle. Companies coming to you, or you're having conversations with companies where they're saying, hey, Casey, listen, we're really having problems hiring the right people or finding the right talent, right? And I would say that part of that links back to branding as well, right? Because it's also positioning that specific company as an employer of choice in a market where people are inundated with choices, right? What would make you stand out and be that company of choice, right? So it's things like that, right?
Man, how does something, I mean, you can't go without a foundation. You can't go without a blueprint. Right. How is something so, by this definition, critical to everything, not just sales and marketing, but the whole company and its go-to-market approach? How is something so critical, so overlooked, and so like cast aside? Where does this misconception come from?
I can speak mostly to B2B, because that's
for sure.
I've spent the best part of my career. B2B traditionally, I mean, it's changing, right? But there's still plenty of opportunity out there. But just to answer your question, many B2B companies and industries are very sales and product driven, right? They have been built up, especially those, I would say in legacy industries or traditional industries, they were very driven by sales results, right? Or by the efforts of the salespeople, or by the effort of the functions or organs within the company responsible for putting out those products.
Gotcha.
I know I make it sound much simpler than it really is.
Well, no, I mean, I get it. It's like like a legacy mindset, right? Like it's how we always did it.
Correct.
So it is like a status quo. It's not like people became idiots. We just have evolved to know better. And not everyone has.
Well, let me ask you this, Casey. Like, I'm sure you've never heard this one before. We've been doing it like that for 20 years, and it's served us well. Why do we need to change that now?
I know, right? That's
right.
You literally know many of the people riding horses said that to the car people,
Pretty much.
And like, what do you say to that? Well, a horse does get you there.
And so here's the thing, and I'm not to say it's not necessarily only because of what's been happening in the past 2 years. I'll give you a hint. It starts with C, ends with D, and then there's 19 attached to it, right? But even before that, I would even say 5 years ago, we already saw these dramatic shifts within different B2B industry segments and verticals, right? And
Yeah.
what kind of shifts am I talking about? Certain methodologies were no longer working. Certain ways of certain methods of customer acquisition were no longer relevant or just not as effective as they used to be. Conferences.
Yeah.
Excuse me, sore throat.
Right.
Digitization.
Yep.
So rapid digitization and advancement of technologies. I wouldn't go as far as to say it's made certain functions obsolete, but it's getting to that point where it's making certain roles no longer relevant to the current state of affairs, right? So you take all of that, and of course, let's not forget, and I think it's something you brought up when you were on my show, new competitors and new market entrants, right? If we just, let's narrow it down a little bit, and even this narrowing down seems a bit broad. Let's just think about SaaS, right?
Right.
How many companies were there? How many SaaS companies were there 6 years ago versus now? Right.
Man, it's probably grown tremendously, right? It's probably grown.
It's tripled, quadrupled, right? I mean, like there were, I can't remember the exact figure, but like let's say 5 years ago, I'm just going to throw out a random number there, but let's say there were 50,000 SaaS companies, right? Okay. There's probably like 1 million now.
Right. Yeah, it's not a linear growth, right?
Oh,
there's just
correct.
Yeah.
Correct. And don't worry, I'm going somewhere with this. This is me like rambling on. New market entrants, new competition, new companies. They're not necessarily all offering the same type of product or service.
Yeah.
But many of them do.
Right.
Right. So here comes the question. In this world of unlimited supply and also increasing demand, how are you as a company going to stand out amidst that sea of sameness where there's so much noise, there's so much competition? What will make your potential customer choose you over company B?
Right. What will make them choose you?
Well,
God, we don't want it to be price.
Well, it's interesting. I just before you hit record, I was almost anticipating that you were going to bring that one up, so I had something prepared. There are several studies, right? And take your pick: McKinsey, Gartner, Forrester, right? So I looked at one by Forrester, right? And they did a survey of, I think it was about 200 B2B buyers or people responsible for purchasing decisions within B2B companies all around the world, right?
Okay.
And they asked, okay, so what would make you decide? What would seal the deal for you, right? What would make you want to purchase said product from said service provider? And guess what they didn't guess? What wasn't the first answer? Price.
Right.
The first answer was, does this vendor already have experience with our company? Do they already know our business? Are they within our industry? And if I go and check with my industry colleagues or my peers within my communities and my circles, when I ask them, hey, have you heard of company X? What will these people say? Right? So it all indirectly trickles back to, that's the importance of branding. Right. And the thing that a lot of people don't understand, and I think it's important to bring this up in this conversation, you cannot measure or you cannot track results for brand effectiveness the same way that you track sales. Right.
Oh, okay. So that's probably what throws people off, right? Is they're trying to make it fit into that box and it doesn't want to. No.
And I would say, at least in my experience, the answer is not very straightforward because there are a lot of components there, right? There's a lot of components in terms of how do you measure if what you're doing in terms of your branding efforts is working or not, right? But what I can say is this, and that's why I love using, excuse me for going back to the real estate analogy, But that's why I like comparing it to real estate, because people generally, if you're a homeowner, or your first time homeowner or whatever, you understand the comparison because it's very similar. It's an investment that you make right now for long-term gains. It's not something where you can just cash out in 3 months. Right.
So yeah, you can't cash it in quickly, and you also can't cash it out quickly. It's not how it works. Whereas maybe with like PPC, you can get some leads in, you can cash some sales out.
That's right.
It's this otherworldly thing.
That's
the
right.
foundation that doesn't change.
Exactly. And similar to real estate, similar to a house, a brand is a living, breathing thing. Now, I know that a house isn't a living, breathing thing, but what I'm trying to say is you have to constantly maintain it. You have to constantly take care of it.
Right.
You have to see where you're at. If you want to increase its market value, maybe, fix up your garage, fix up the basement.
Right.
You throw in a pool in the backyard, something I wouldn't recommend up in Canada because you can only use it like 1 month a year.
Yeah, 1 month. Hey, it's pool time.
And the rest of the time you just turn it into a hockey rink, right? But like different strokes for different folks. But I think where I'm going with this is you have to treat your company's brand the same way. This isn't something, and I'm sure you've heard this one too. This isn't something where you say, "Oh, Casey, come on, man, we don't need branding. I mean, like we've got a logo on a website, we're good."
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's not that straightforward.
No.
Right.
So yeah, and so I mean, I hear this convincing argument, and so how do we do it? Before how we do it right, can you define what it is? Because I feel like that contributes to a lot of this misunderstanding.
Absolutely. You mean define what a brand is, or branding is? Okay, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, let me start. Okay, perfect question. Let me start by telling you, and telling the listeners out there what a brand is not. Okay. Let's start with that. All right. A brand is not your logo. A brand is not your website. A brand is not an ad. All right. Your brand is not your swag. And probably by this point in the conversation, people listening to this are going, "Are you freaking nuts?" Of course, that's part of the branding. Of course, that's part of branding. Right. And I'm going to say that is the end result of branding. Right. That's an outcome of branding. But that in itself is not your brand. Right. So what brand actually is, and just bear with me here for a second, because I'm gonna go real deep.
Man, let's do it. Right. Let's do it.
A brand essentially is a collection of perceptions that your customers, that your stakeholders and your partners have of your company, the products and services you provide, and the values that your company represents and that your company believes in. So it's a little bit abstract, right, in that regard. But there is a way to make that more tangible. And the way that you make that more tangible is by starting with something we call the verbal expression of your brand. Right? Okay. So what in tarnation is a verbal expression? So I'm gonna break it.
Yeah.
All right.
What is this thing?
So you start with things like, what is your vision, your mission, and your values, right? Mm-hmm. And people are like, "Oh gosh," I've seen some people's like, I see them slightly rolling their eyes when I start talking about this stuff. But let me come back to planet Earth for a second and help ground this in something that is relatable. Okay. Right? But what is a brand mission and vision and the values? So the vision is like what your company aspires to be, right? Do you want to be the best B2B podcasting company out there that provides companies or
hell yeah
with a great experience?
Right.
So that's your brand vision, right? That's aspirational, right? And your brand mission is building on that, right? So how are you going to achieve that? And what kind of experience do you want your customers to have when they work with you?
Right.
Right. And values are these core fundamental principles that you believe in as a company that you then pass on to your people and your customers. So, a lot of people say honesty and transparency, teamwork, keeping it simple, accountability, responsibility, and so on and so forth, right?
Right.
And you go from there to things like, okay, what your positioning. So your positioning is like, okay, what perception do you want others in the market to have about your company, right?
Okay.
So are you premium? Are you mid-range? Are you on the lower cost range? Are you the podcasting agency for companies in
For
B2B
everybody.
SaaS, right? Or are you trying to be everything to everyone, which is a positioning I wouldn't recommend, right?
Right.
Value proposition is something where it's what are you delivering to your customers that is of value to them. And I know that word gets thrown around like you won't believe, but for me, value means what are you doing or what are you delivering to customers that is helpful, useful, and meaningful, right?
Right.
And the abbreviation of all of that is hum, right? So what are you humming?
I like that.
And finally, also your key messaging. So what are the most compelling things about what you do and the benefits that you provide to customers that you convey or that you want to convey, right?
Where do you get the answers for these things? Those seem like the right questions to ask. They also, and I wonder if this is maybe why people don't do this, is because this seems like the hard work that happens before the logo, the website, the swag, and it's almost more fun to just let's go make a t-shirt, because trying to decide what you hum, how am I helpful, but also the idea of not being everything to everyone is hard, and you kind of want to be. And by doing this, you're deciding not to be, and then you don't know who you should. Does that when you help people with brand, do you end up having these spiral questions of people don't even know if they want to decide if they have a niche to go after?
Well, okay, no, terrific question, and I get asked that all the time. So the answer to that question is really, look, at the end of the day, you find the answers to these questions by conducting research, right? And it can come in different formats. And I would say the easier one to do is, qualitative, where you do surveys. But I would argue
that
to answer the questions of all these attributes I just mentioned, you're going to have to do qualitative, right? Which means you have to conduct in-depth interviews, right? And the insights generated and the answers provided from this research will then give you the answers that you need. And so the next question might be, okay, so who are you gonna interview, Christian? I'm really curious. In an ideal world, it would be a balance of like internal and external stakeholders. So internal, obviously, being employees, and I would say employees beyond the senior management, right? So different levels of the organization. External being customers, right? And even customers, you could segment them further, right? You can talk to existing customers, you can talk to previous customers, you can talk to customers that decided not to work with your company anymore, although those are difficult conversations. But I would argue that difficult conversations need to be had as well, right? It's actually important. It's actually important to have those difficult conversations, because that's how you learn and that's how you improve. Right. So that's where I would start. But the question you asked me is, how do you go about branding, right? And I started by answering the question about what you should not do, right?
Right. Okay. Quick tangent then.
Yeah, please.
You can't be the podcasting agency for everyone.
Right.
You got to pick some battles.
Mm-hmm.
You got to pick. How have companies gone about figuring out that? I mean, I've got a few. Do you just finger in the air? You like pick one? How does that tend to happen?
The answer I'm going to say is not very straightforward. I'm going to say there's no rank and file answer to say like, oh, Casey, that's really easy. You just do ABC, right? It's, in my experience, it's a combination of like, what is your own skill set and competency, right? Whether that's you as the individual or you as the company collectively, right? Look at the companies that you've dealt with in the past. And I've worked with a couple of companies where or clients where they said, well, you know, we provide our solutions to everybody. And I would argue that is, I doubt that's true.
Not true.
Right?
Yeah, can't be true. Yeah.
Yeah. And why do I say that? Because if you look back at like historical sales deals, for example, that were closed,
Yep.
look at the ones where you as a company not just generated the most revenue, but which accounts were the most profitable. Which of the accounts that you've worked with on a longer term basis came back to you to work with you? Which one of these companies have you worked with for a longer period of time who have recommended you and your services to others? Right. So there's a lot of elements in this process that can't necessarily be quantified or attributable, right?
Right.
But that's the way that I would go about defining that. And that's one part of it. The second part of it is, okay, now with that knowledge, does that necessarily mean you only focus on this historical data and these historical clients? Not necessarily, especially now that, you know, things have changed so much, right? So the other question I would urge companies to ask themselves, right, is now armed with that knowledge and with our known skills and competencies, who can we provide? I'm going to avoid saying the word value, but who can we help the most with what we have to offer? Right. Who stands to gain the most? And I would even look at it from a perspective, okay, which segments should we go after where we know that they have these pain points, these challenges, right?
Right.
These are the goals and objectives that they need to reach, and why are we the ones that are best equipped to help them to get where they need to go? That's how I would go about addressing that.
That makes total sense, man. I really appreciate you.
Yeah. No, please.
Ciphering that.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
So we've got brand.
Mm-hmm.
Is now the time to talk about how to do it right? I feel like we're creating it correctly. Then how, once it's sort of created, and obviously this is if you're listening to this and it sounds like we're skipping a few steps, that's why you need to go hire Christian to help you with the brand process. But let's say you've done that, or they've read your future book and now they're ready to express the brand and like action it and get it in front of people. How do you do that? How do you brand? How do you do branding?
Yeah, no, great question. It was something another podcast host asked me when I was interviewed by him, and I would say that it's generally a two-pronged approach. And what I mean by that is, like, 'cause again, it's going back to the whole misconception that many people have, is when people hear the word branding, they immediately default to the visual aspect, the visual aesthetic. While I'm not dismissing that, okay, for all you visual branders out there, please, I'm not raining on your parade here. Design is important. And I'll give you an example. You do not want to look like, your website was designed in 2001, right? And it's not responsive on mobile, right? So those things.
That's a good point. That's a good point.
Like, yeah, or you're just, or you look at the webs, or you look at somebody's website and you know exactly which stock image archive they pulled that out of, right? Like, just a lot of pictures of people high-fiving each other, and that, that conveys, and that's going back to that whole sea of sameness, right? So again, it's about the image that you want to convey, and it doesn't necessarily just translate visually, it's verbally too. So what kind of messaging do you have on your website, on your sales material, on your social media platform, right? So, but now I'm gonna go and answer your question, because I think this is even the suspense is killing me, right? So
right.
I think so we've discussed a couple of the steps already, but I would say the way to do it, like the right way, is you need to have clear answers to the questions. And this part of it is, I think, is table stakes. Who is your target audience? Right. And why are they the right fit for what you offer? Right. So even if you're a company like Cisco, who is huge, right? Cisco will still have niches that they go after based on specific products and services that they are offering to said vertical, right? Right. So niche down based on the audience and a specific problem that that they're facing. So back to what I was saying earlier, What are their pain points? What are their challenges? How can you help them? And then the next question is, what do you want to be known for? What makes you different, right? And don't say pricing, or don't, please, how many times have you heard this one? What makes us different is our people. I doubt that, right?
Interesting, yeah.
And I don't want to rain on anybody's parade, but why do I say that the people doesn't make you unique, or doesn't set you apart? Because a lot of people leave, right?
Right.
Then what, right? So again, not dismissing that people are a key component, but what is it beyond that?
Right.
Is it something about your offer? Is it something about the systems and processes you have in place? Is it something about your capability to solve the problems of customers and how you help them? Right? So that's the first thing. The second thing, as I said before, is you got to do your homework, right? You got to do your market research, and that's important, not just to help better define the branding aspect and the development of your brand, but it's also important for you to know where your target audience goes to look for information or answers to their questions. And so why is that important? Why is that important? It's important because if you understand what their questions, their challenges and objections are, my goodness, you're going to have a lot of content that you can develop that will help to answer these questions, and you can put that stuff out there in a podcast,
exactly,
or other mediums, and people will pick up that content and go, hey, that's exactly the kind of that was the answer that we were looking for, or we were looking for an answer to that question, that challenge, right? And let me just drop the statistic on you, okay?
Yeah, please.
So you've probably read this report. It's by Gartner, and it's about the complexity of the B2B buying journey. Okay. So let's just put it this way. Short of stating the obvious, the buying journey in B2B is not linear. Right? If you look at the chart they came up with based on the hundreds of interviews they did, it looks like an explosion, right? Because it's all over the place. And why is it all over the place? Because you get to one stage of the process and then they start going back, right? They start going back and they go to somebody's website and download the white paper, and then they take that white paper and then put it into a community and say, hey, what's your take on this? And then they go to a Slack channel, right? And chat with a couple of their industry peers. So it's a very haphazard process, right? But so here's the thing. The statistic I was going to drop on you is 17%. And what does the 17% stand for? Or what does it represent?
Right.
When B2B buyers decide that said vendor meets their criteria and their requirements, they only spend 17% of their time actually talking to that vendor.
That's after they decide it meets the requirements?
Yeah. Right. So what does that tell you? That tells you that they prefer to actually conduct their own research, right? And their own inquiries, and get some, do some of their own verification and validation.
Right.
And they sometimes don't even want to talk to the sales rep.
Right.
So how do you address, given, and this isn't something I made up, this is, you can go and look it up, right? It's, this is based on research, right? It's not necessarily representative of the entire ecosystem, but it's representative of a few hundred B2B companies that were interviewed. Well, okay, and going back to my question. So with that in mind, right, what are companies going to do now to get in front of these B2B buyers if they don't want to talk to your salespeople? You've got to find another way. And I would argue that way is to do something online that makes you, as they say, Google easily.
Yeah, and you don't have control over that, or maybe you do. No.
Well, to a certain extent.
Yeah, but it's not direct control. It's sort of out of your hands because
it's out of your hands.
They're doing their research out there.
Correct. All right. So that's the second point. The third point, which I think is something that whether you're in marketing or sales, you need to do this anyway. Talk to your customers, right? Something I mentioned before. You need to talk to your customers, not just the existing customers, but even even past customers or prospects or leads where the deal didn't go through, right? And get an understanding about like why you are the right fit for them or not, right? And ideally, if you can, because I know regulations vary depending on where you are, but record the conversation.
Yeah.
Right. And listen to the questions that they have, the objections that they make, and also what their aspirations are. Like, why did they even come to your company in the first place? Right? Why were they considering you? They were probably considering you because they have a challenge that needs to be addressed, and they thought perhaps you might be able to help them further along in that journey.
Right.
Right. I'm making it sound simpler than it actually is, but I think you know where I'm going. Right. And you listen back to those conversations, and the insights that you generate from these conversations are gold for marketing teams to develop content that you can put out there to help build your brand. And this is where I'm going with all this, right?
Yeah.
It's not just to have beautiful images. It's to help build your brand's reputation and position your company as an expert, right? And build that authority and expertise and credibility. Because how often have you heard this, Casey? Like, people will work with people they know, like, and trust.
Right.
And if you have that credibility and you have that expertise that helps them to make informed decisions, then you've built that trust, right? And this is why, and I'm sure you're the same way, but this is why I get so frustrated with some of these guys that are constantly pitch slapping you or me on LinkedIn. And some of them are providing services that are bigger ticket, right? And why would they think that I would immediately say, yes, let's jump on a call, and yes, I'm going to buy whatever you have to sell if I don't even know who you are?
Right.
And if I look you up, what am I going to find? Right?
Yeah.
And that's something that people need to consider, right? That's what people need to consider. So,
powerful.
Yeah. If this is getting too deep, tell me, and then we'll
no, this is just powerful, man. I've got notes over here like crazy.
Okay. So that's when you're doing your research, right? So now we've gone through the whole, like, understanding who your target audience is, talking to your customers, understanding where they go to get their information. I think another thing which is important to understand, if companies haven't done this already, is understand what that buyer's journey looks like, right? I just brought that one up about Gartner, right? So is your customer's decision-making process, the buying journey, how complex is it? Who are the stakeholders that are involved at each stage of that journey? Because they are going to be different, right? Some of them will be there all throughout the journey. Some of them will be different. And I would say even you can categorize the stakeholders, right?
Right.
What I mean by categorize. So I've seen some of these terms floating around on LinkedIn, so I'm going to try to like use some of them. You'll have your champions, right? So these are the guys that are going to call the shots. You'll have your influencers. So people that they don't necessarily make the call. They don't make the decision to buy what you have to sell, but they sure as heck have an influence over that process, right? And blockers.
Right.
Blockers. And blockers, sorry in advance, but blockers are like, finance or legal, right?
Party poopers, honestly.
Or procurement.
Oh,
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So these are the people that they may have the final say, because at the end of the day, like once the buying committee has made a decision, it gets it then gets reviewed by these guys, right, to make sure that it's compliant, it's all legal, payment terms are okay, pricing's okay, right, all in accordance with the company's procedures, right? So it's important for you to understand, and I like to call it, and who is part of the ecosystem, right? Because I think a mistake that a lot of people make is they always go straight for the decision maker, right? And they get frustrated when they can't reach that person. Which is why it's important to reach out to all the different stakeholders within the ecosystem. But this is what you need to remember, and this is why messaging is important. Each person will care about different things. Each stakeholder in that ecosystem will have different sets of priorities and things that they consider important. So make sure that your messaging also appeals to the right people, because different members of the target audience will have different, as I said, different priorities, different things that are relevant to them, and different things that they will care about. And that's why this cookie cutter, like one size fits all approach generally doesn't work.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. Certainly not one size fits all.
No. So after you've done all of that, also it's important to understand, people in your, I like to call it your competitive ecosystem.
Okay.
Because let's face it, and sometimes once in a while you hear people say like, oh, we don't have any competition. We're the only ones that provide this in the market. Whereas I would argue, if your customer or your would-be customer has an alternative to the product or service that you're providing, whether that's the same as what you're offering or not, that's competition.
100%. Yeah. Like for me, sometimes it's either people launching their own podcast or them guesting on someone else's podcast.
Right.
It's like
yes,
two different sides of the coin. It's a completely different thing, but in some people's minds, unless it's, detailed out to them, they might think of it as the same thing, and it'll compete.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Man.
So,
well, dude, this is so good.
I mean, I could keep going on and on and on, because we just got past the research part. But
okay. What comes after? Yeah, right. There's so much. Okay, research, and then what's next?
And then that's when you develop your brand, your brand strategy, or and your branding per se, right? And that's where you basically split it into two groups if it hasn't been done already, right? And so that's, again, going back to the verbal expression of your brand and the visual expression of your brand. I think the visual expression people will easily understand, right? So that's basically, okay, do you need a new logo? Does your current logo need a refresh? What about your website? Do you have branding guidelines that, it's that like big document that shows you what colors to use, what font to use, and all that good stuff. But the verbal expression is basically talking about things like, okay, points of differentiation. And in my experience, there tends to be three. And what does that even mean? Points of differentiation are, what are the three things that will make you unique as a brand?
Mm-hmm.
And that's not based on what you and the board of directors discussed internally. That's based on the research that you conducted with your customers.
From the research.
Right.
Yeah, that's I mean, I don't know if you've used Traction or EOS, but there's a thing in there that says, what are your three uniques?
Yep.
And it's a small little question. It doesn't get much attention, but it's so much bigger. To your point, all that, like, now, if you've done all this work you've described, maybe it's not so hard. It just sort of bubbled out from conversations, and you actually talk to the customer, you actually listened. But if you haven't done any of that stuff, the idea of trying to figure that out is really challenging.
Correct. And you'd be surprised, Casey. Like, I've asked some customers, like, what makes you guys different as a brand, and how often I've, some of them can answer with confidence, others were struggling to answer that question. Right. And even some of those that answer the question with confidence, when you hear the answers, I'm like, yeah, that kind of sounds the same as the as the other guy.
Right. Like, everyone just said it's the most user-friendly thing there.
Yeah. And I mean, again, don't take my word for it, because, a lot of guys are like, you branding people, but like, don't take my word for it. The next time you get on a discovery call with a prospect that's never heard of you, or that's only heard of you, like, when they agree to the call, and they ask you that question, I would urge you to record their reaction when you answer. This is what makes us different.
Record the reaction.
And if they accept your explanation or not.
Right. If they roll their eyes.
Well, they probably won't roll their eyes, but they'll probably go, mm-hmm. Yeah, we will discuss this internally and get back to you. Right. I'm like, right. So that's why that's important, right? So you start with the points of differentiation. you go with what I said, like positioning. So how you're perceived in
Right.
the minds of the target audience, your value proposition in terms of the experience and the benefits that you want to deliver to customers, and messaging. So what would make them relate to your brand based on the research that you conducted, and then you group that into a messaging house. So why do I say messaging house? Because once again, your brand messaging will be different for the different members of the target audience. Because when we're talking about target audience here, we're not just talking about customers. We're talking about also potential talent, right? What would make you the employer of choice?
Yeah.
Why would they choose to come and work with you over the Googles and the IBMs of the world?
Right. Man.
So think about the other thing I would do, and this is not necessarily always directed at brand strategy, but developing target personas and your customer journey map, right? And that's also based on research. So target personas obviously they're, as the name implies, it's a semi-fictional representation, right? And I would probably urge you to go deeper than a frustrated Frank, right? Like, I mean, we've all seen those target personas.
We have, man.
And that ain't it, right? That ain't
No,
it.
it's not.
Let me tell you, Casey, because nobody gives a hoot if frustrated Frank is married with 2 kids and likes to go to baseball on Sundays. That's not the
Likes
type of persona
dogs.
you're looking for.
Hates Chevrolets.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Doesn't actually matter.
What you actually need to be thinking about when you're developing personas is, okay, so what level is this guy at in the organization? Is he a decision maker or is he an influencer, right? What does a typical day in the life of frustrated Frank look like? What is his mandate? What are the things that he needs to achieve, right, in his job? And why is that important? Because that will help you figure out how what you provide will fit into his plan.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Where does frustrated Frank go to look for information if he asks questions? And like, oh gosh, I really need to find a solution to XYZ. Where does he go? Google, Slack, LinkedIn. Where does he go? All right. Preferences and objectives. So preferences is like, okay, what does he like and what does he prefer? And here we're talking professionally. Okay. So none of this like baseball on Sunday stuff, right?
Right.
What are the things that he might object to? Right. So what are the things that would impede his decision making?
Right.
So you come up with personas like that, because that will help not just you, that will also help your salespeople to understand, okay, this is the kind of person that I should be reaching out to, right? And I would even go a step further if you can. While you're developing a target persona, I would also develop an anti-target persona. And what does that mean? That's the type of person that you probably shouldn't be working with because they're not a right fit.
I like that. So you can be on the lookout for it and not sell it to them and find out later we shouldn't be working together.
Yeah, because I mean, like, look, I'm not going to call anybody out, but like, we've all seen them. Like, I like to call them window shoppers, right? They just want to see what's out there, right?
And jerks too.
Yeah. If you don't give them what they want, or they think your price is too high, then they'll make some like really like condescending remarks, and you'll never hear from them again.
Right. If you're lucky. If you're not lucky, they actually end up buying from you, and they just drive you bonkers forever.
Yeah, that's what there's that old AC/DC song from the 90s called Highway to Hell. Right?
You're right.
That's exactly what that is.
That is exactly what that is. Yeah.
Customer journey mapping, we've talked about it. So the different stages, and I would say in the mapping, you got to think about it this way, right? The different stages and what they would care about at each stage, and what the key touch points at each stage are. And when we talk about touch points here, we're generally referring to like communications channels, right?
Right.
And that again is from research. That is not something where you're hiring somebody to make a wild guess, right? And based on a certain number of factors and attributes, then you can see at which stage what you should be paying attention to and prioritizing. And that will help with your planning. That's why this stuff is important. And that's why I always urge clients not to skip this part.
Right.
Right. Because you're gonna pay for not doing this due diligence up front.
100%. Because you're gonna keep creating, you're gonna keep doing things, taking action in the wrong direction, and you'll create things that never actually help you. And so you're constantly, it's like you're slipping on ice. You're never quite making it forward.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. So there's that aspect of it. And so I was talking about the verbal expression. So now I'm talking about the visual expression. And the visual expression, I mean, this is a completely different podcast interview, but I'm just going to give you the Cliff Notes version.
Yeah.
I'll give you the Cliff Notes version.
That'll be round 2 when we have you back. Have you go in more deep. Yeah.
But, and don't take my word for it, Casey. You can talk to anybody that's designed a website, anybody that's a graphic designer. And there's always been 2 schools of thought, and they've always thrown out this question: what should come first, the design or the copy? And the answer always needs to be the copy.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's why you start with a verbal expression of your brand first, because that will determine how your brand will then be visually translated, as I like to call it. Right. What kind of colors you should use, what kind of style, what kind of font, what kind of imagery. And while I understand that some of that is very subjective, because I mean, let's be honest, like maybe something that I find beautiful, you might be like, ugh, what are you doing, man? Right. But again, it goes back to, how do you want to be perceived in the market? What kind of image do you want to project? Right.
Yep.
And I know that this isn't a podcast about design. This isn't a podcast interview about design, but like what I'm trying to say here is, going back to what I was talking about, like early on in the conversation, you do not want to look like, okay, the last time you upgraded your website was in 2001, right? You have to make it relevant with the times, right? And I think another trending factor in North America, at least, and again, this really depends on your industry, but are you trying to project an image as a company that believes in, is an inclusive environment, right? So is that reflected in your image? Are you environmentally friendly if you're not, for those of you that are not remote and you actually have a physical office space, right? So all of these questions, right? So again, it goes back to, and this is why the verbal part of it needs to be done first. Like, what kind of image do you want to project, and what do you want people to remember about you and your brand and what you're putting out there? So now that we've gotten past all this, like the design aspect of it, what's another way that you can build your brand beyond the visuals? And it was going back to what I said earlier, is positioning yourself and building on that authority and expertise within your niche, right?
Yes.
So in your case about like podcasting, right? And this is where some of that research that you conducted with these customers and what have you, this is where you can really take that to another level, and you can develop content that is helping to address these challenges and objections. And let me just give you a concrete example, because I know a lot of people might be listening to this and going, yeah, but that's very generic and theoretical, Christian. Like, give us the real deal here. Right? Like, blah, right? It's part of the pretext, and I might have talked to you about this. This is the pretext why I started my podcast, right? B2B Marketers on a Mission. It was born out of a frustration that I had professionally and that clients of mine had, right? Which is that in B2B, more often than not, unfortunately, organizations tend to treat marketing as secondary and as a support function, right? And every time, with every crisis that comes rolling around the corner, whose budget is the first to get slashed, right? Or thanks for your, and I've been on the receiving end of this, where I was in corporate marketing in another lifetime, and we spent months coming up with these detailed plans and strategic plans based on market research, where we actually went out and interviewed customers.
Right.
And the board of directors said, well, thanks for your help, but we're going to take that money and invest it in other departments.
Yeah.
Right. So
Yeah.
I'm not saying that this is going to change overnight, but it is changing. I think that's the one positive aspect I can see, that it is changing, right? And that
And it can change by taking more control this way.
correct. So, and I think it's important to keep that momentum going and to help to shift that mindset within organizations to help them see that marketing has the opportunity to have a more strategic role, and that marketing should have a voice at the table in the upper levels of the organization, right? But so here's the but in order for that to happen, marketers need to change too.
Yeah.
Right. Marketers need to change the way they work. Marketers need to change the way they think. They need to be accountable for a part of the revenue. They need to understand how their companies generate revenue. They need to understand revenue versus profit, right? It certainly wouldn't help hurt, right?
No, certainly
wouldn't hurt, right? For them to have sales training, for them to have training in finance as well, so that they understand, again, the inner machinery within the organization, right?
So true, man.
And going back, come on, Chris, long story, get to the point.
No.
The way that I planned out my podcast, and what I mean by that is like, I created a content plan, and about, okay, who should I bring on? Right? What kind of people should I be interviewing? And the way that I do that is I do quite a bit of social listening. I do some research, and I spend a lot of time on LinkedIn, and I look at what people are talking about and what kind of topics they're discussing, what kind of questions they're asking, what kind of things that they're having very passionate exchanges and disagreements about.
Mm-hmm.
And I put that all into a spreadsheet. Right? I split it up, right? So observations, questions, and all that, right? So there's one column for that. There's another column for how can you address this objection, and then the answer, right? And the answer generally tends to be around a B2B marketing discipline or an area of expertise. So for example, SEO, customer experience, customer success, market research. And then I go out and find, okay, so who would be somebody that's not only qualified, but also has enough experience to speak at length about this topic comfortably, right?
Yep.
So by that, taking that example, going back to the one about B2B branding, companies can do that as well, right? They can identify these pain points that their niche is having, or people in their industry are facing, and then they can develop content to address these questions, address these challenges, right? So that's one way, right? And they can distribute that content, and that can be through social media, that can be by guesting on podcasts,
all the channels,
all of that stuff, video. I mean, it's endless, right? So that's certainly one way to do it, I think, which is great. And being also creative in the content. So I'm not just talking about like creating written content. Like I said, there's different formats, right? Another way that I think that people can build brands is, again, there's a book by a guy called Donald Miller, right? So it's called The Story Brand.
Yeah.
So it's using that story brand approach. And what does the story brand approach consist of, right? So I'm going to summarize the 200 pages of that book into probably 2 sentences.
Okay.
Right?
That's cool.
I'm going to try. So Donald Miller said, or basically the whole pretext of the story brand is based on the classic format for any story or myth, right, throughout history and across different cultures. And it consists of 7 parts. What are those 7 parts? A hero has a problem, meets a guide, gives him a plan, encourages him to take action, or her, which then leads to success and avoids failure. Take that template or formula, whatever you want to call it, and apply that to the way that you tell your story, build your brand, But here's the important thing. The hero of the story is not your brand. The hero of your story is your customer.
Yeah.
You're the guide. Your brand is the guide in the story, right? And that's something that you need to remember, because often enough, I've seen it happen where the companies make themselves the hero of the story. And that tends not to go well.
Yeah, right. You're not the hero. You're the guide.
Correct.
Dude, this is so good, man.
Man.
Dude, you are my new Jedi master sensei of all things brand. I can't believe I feel like we probably scratched the surface. It's almost like I probably asked Elon Musk how to build a rocket.
Yeah.
We just talked about maybe the nozzle of one of the rockets just now. There's so much more to this, but I want to shift just a little bit here.
Sure.
Who are you? I've been on your podcast. Now you've been on my podcast. You absolutely know what you're talking about. You are preaching the right message and you're teaching everyone how to do this the right way. But take me back in time. Little you days, little Chris, what was he doing? What was he growing up? What was it like? Did you know you're going to be an entrepreneur, a brand wizard at that when you got older? What was it like?
Oh, absolutely not. But like, thanks for that question. I mean, that was actually a fun one. I'm like, yeah, so a little bit about me. My name is Christian, and I'm originally from Austria, and that's, if for those of you that don't know where that is, it's a country in Central Europe. Not to be confused with Australia, because God knows I've had that happen to me a couple of times, right? And I don't know if you've seen Dumb and Dumber in the 90s.
Yes.
Like, Australia, g'day, mate. All right. No, I'm not from there. Right. No, so little me. I mean, I was born in Vienna. We lived in the countryside, so we lived very close to a farm and on the edge of a forest. So little me was always spending a lot of time in those forests, right?
Wow.
And at the age of 6, my parents decided to completely uproot and move to Australia.
So you did actually go to Australia?
Yeah, I did actually go to Australia. Right.
That will confuse people.
Yeah. You can tell from the accent, but yeah, I did spend some time down there, and I spent my elementary and high school in the Philippines, right, in Southeast Asia, because that's where my mom is originally from, right?
Wow.
Yeah, that was growing up, the Philippines at the time was really underdeveloped. So I just remember growing up with 5 to 6 hour blackouts where we're doing homework in the dark and sweating, right? But we still had a good time as kids, right? Like we'd run around in the rain and what have you. And then from there I went to Singapore, and that's where I went to university. And after university I spent 2 years in Germany, and after that I went to China, Shanghai, China. So a family friend of ours in Munich talked me into going there because they were living there as expats, and he said, yeah, come over, it's you'll have a great time, there's a lot of opportunities and so on and so forth. So I moved to Shanghai in August of 2004 with one suitcase. Wow. And I told myself
that's all you really need is one suitcase, but you're right, you moved your whole life though, right?
So yeah, I moved there under the pretext that I'm just gonna probably stick around for a year and then I'll see what I'll do after that, right?
And China was cool with that?
I haven't asked them.
Okay.
After a year, I said, I'm probably going to stay another year.
Okay.
And after 5 years, I stopped counting and I ended up staying 13 years.
Wow.
And I did not know that I was going to be who I am today, of course, right? Like, I think when I was a kid, I was so unbelievably enamored by Indiana Jones, and I thought that I was going to grow up to be an archaeologist. And because I thought it was so much fun running through the jungle and getting chased and stuff like that, right? Finding ancient artifacts, and then I later on I realized, yeah, that might be a little bit of a dangerous gig. So, right. But I mean, I got my first job, or I was exposed to the world of marketing December of 2006, January 2007. So it was my first job in an advertising agency. Wow. And I went down the advertising route for a couple of years, and switched from there to corporate marketing, and I did that for 2 years. But I somehow realized that my heart was really in the agency world, so I went back.
Oh,
Right?
cool. Okay. Yep.
Yeah, and did that up until the point where my wife and I decided to move to Toronto because that's where she's originally from.
Okay.
And while we were here, I was still working remotely for the agency back in Shanghai. In 2019, I decided, well, now it's time to towards the end of 2019, I decided it's time to take this leap of faith and see what happens, right? And here I am.
Launch it, make it happen. Man, do you have like 13 different passports? Are you like Jason Bourne?
Yeah, or the guy, I can't remember his name now, the guy in the Blacklist with David
Oh,
Spader.
yeah.
James Spader, sorry.
Yeah, right.
David Spader is the other guy. No, I do not.
You don't have 30. Okay.
No.
Okay.
No.
Well, at least that that you could talk about on a podcast. Totally get that.
Yeah,
what a crazy journey.
I've got
What's
a few.
that?
I've got a few hidden on the wall here, but
yeah, exactly. In a certain spot, you can push through and grab them and take your bug out bag and go. Well, I have a bit of a hypothetical question for you because I may or may not have a time machine just southeast of you, or almost actually due east of you here in New Hampshire. And let's say you come visit, we get some beer, some lobster, have a good time. You get the chance to use the time machine and you go back in time. It's a particular time machine. You get to go meet yourself a couple days after getting that business degree in Singapore.
Mm-hmm.
And you get to go meet that version of you, that age, that life, part of your life journey. What kind of things would you tell yourself?
Yeah, that's a great question. And back to your earlier comment, I mean, it has been a heck of a journey. It's not just because of all these different places I've lived in. It's just because I went through, I navigated different waters until I found my my harbor, if I'm going to go back to the nautical term.
Oh, yeah.
If I would meet the younger version of myself, I would tell that younger version of myself, Christian, for goodness sakes, follow your heart, learn to live your own life and not the life that others think you should live. Because that's what I was all about in my 20s. I was a crowd pleaser. I was a very accommodating person. I was completely different from the guy that you're talking to today, right? And I will remember one of my earlier mentors, the guy that mentored me through my early days in advertising. Unfortunately, he doesn't listen to podcasts, but David McLean, if you're listening to this, this is for you, man. I remember him telling me at a bar in Shanghai, he said, if you don't take control and build your own life, you're gonna spend the rest of your life building somebody else's dream. And I know there's different versions of that one, but that's basically one of the things I would go back and tell myself, right? Not to always be so worried about what other people think, right? Because that influenced everything I did, right? When I was younger.
Oh, I've been there. I know. Yeah, definitely.
I let a lot of those, that judgment and those preconceived notions get the better of me and hold me back from being the better version of myself. And it was, to the most part, to my detriment, but thankfully I managed to turn that ship around. So those are two things I would say. The third one, which I would also tell the younger version of myself, is up your financial literacy game.
Okay.
Yeah, because that is something I was completely oblivious to until I was in my 30s, right? Because we were brought up, and I think there are many of us out there. I learned early on in the pandemic, after taking one of these classes, these financial literacy courses, that I'm not the only one. A lot of us were brought up thinking that don't spend anything and keep all your money in the bank, and that's how you grow your wealth. And nothing could be further from the truth. Yeah,
man. Financial literacy is such a thing.
It's such a thing.
Killer advice to give. How can people connect with you? Where do you want them to reach out to you? Social media? Where do you want them to reach out for EINBLICK, for the company, if they want to get some help with branding, they want to go below the surface,
Yeah.
talk more about it.
You mean dive deeper than we did today?
Yes. We got like one or two atmospheres down, right? But there's so many more to go.
Yeah, there's another couple of layers, but
Yeah.
Well, first of all, thanks for this opportunity, Casey.
Oh, absolutely.
I really enjoyed this conversation. The best place to reach out to me is on LinkedIn. I'm pretty active there. And when you do reach out, please let me know that you listen to this amazing conversation with Casey on the Hardcore Marketing Show. My handle is Christian-Klepp-EINBLICK Consulting. So Klepp is Klepp and EINBLICK is EINBLICK. You can also go to our website. So that's EINBLICK.co. So again, www.einblick.co. And if you can, please tune into our podcast. So that's B2B Marketers on a Mission.
Love it, man. And I do recommend people check that podcast out. And I don't say that every time, but not just because I was on it. That was your best episode, by the way, the one I was on.
Oh, without a doubt.
No, but man, you put so much time and your questions were so thought out and so considered, even more research than I do. And I was genuinely impressed and honored to be on your show because you just asked such great questions and then you let me be crazy for a little bit and then you reined it in. You asked another great question. So I highly recommend people check that out. Marketers, B2B Marketers on a Mission. Is that right?
Right.
That's it. We'll link to it all in the show notes. Well, dude, this has been so fun. This has been fun, right? I was on your show. You're on my show. Now we just got to get beers. That's what's next.
Yes. But wait, hang on a second. I got to hand you back Mionia.
Oh, thank you.
There we go.
Okay. I have taken the hammer back for now until you come back and smash something else.
Exactly.
But yeah, thanks again for coming on here, dude. It's been awesome.
Thank you. It's been an honor.
And for those people listening, if you've learned something, and I freaking know you did, because I literally have 2 pages of notes over here, front and back.
Ooh, look at that.
Yeah. I mean, I have to show them to people so they don't think I'm like making it up.
Yeah.
I literally have run out of space on this paper. I am writing in diagonals and everything. So if you've learned like I have, then definitely share this episode with one other person, 2 other people, 900 people. That is thought leadership, getting good information into other people's hands. And that makes you a thought leader just by sharing a podcast. So anyhow, do that, learn from that. I'm going to have to listen to this again because this has been so packed. This is a really good one. This is going in the Hall of Fame for sure.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. And again, thanks again, dude, for being on here.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right, everybody. This has been another, but yet really powerful episode of the Hardcore Marketing Show. We will catch you all next time.